Welcome back to another episode of Meredith with a Y. I am your host, Meredith Willits, and today I am ridiculously excited to have Jasmine's Garden on today talking about all things spiritual and how powerful she just brings the messages on TikTok, and I love her so much, so stay with us. Hello, everyone. This is Meredith with a Y, and I am your host, Meredith Willits. Today we are going to go deep, changing lives, and I am giving you the keys to the castle. Before we get started, I just want to talk about CTC Sesame, the telehealth partner that is sponsoring my podcast, where you can get the exact same telehealth coverage as they offer over at Costco. But with me, you can get it for $22.50 a month with $15 copays. You can see a doctor in your state, choose your doctor, and the providers that are over there. Same day, virtual telehealth, unbelievable prescriptions, dermatology, pediatricians. You can get this for your kids. One subscription, you can get your children in to see a pediatrician, and it is Meredith approved. Birth control, medications, prescriptions. This is great for non-citizens, visitors, students, college students, etc. So check that out. The link is in my bio. But today, I am so very blessed that Jasmine's Garden decided to be with me here today because I follow her on TikTok where she has 3.6 million followers, and she is the keynote speaker for an event coming up in Atlanta, which is the largest spiritual conference. Protect your energy. And thank you so much for being with me, Jasmine. I'm so blessed to have you speaking to my audience today.
For sure. Hey, y'all.
I have to tell you, so I've worked with Jasmine before, and I was in this place in my life, in my journey, where I just could not find that power inside of myself. And I have to say that when I watch your videos, you inspire me to be honest and vulnerable and powerful and say all the things. So first and foremost, thank you for that.
Sure.
But please tell me where that comes from, because I think so many women need it. And I know you had mentioned to me before we hit record that people say to you, I don't know why I made this appointment, but I know I need to talk to you. And that's exactly how I felt. So what is that? How do you bring that out of yourself, that fearlessness?
It's not fearlessness. I think people often conflate that, I think, with my desire to remain authentic. I would say for the most part, scared when I post anything. There's always a little bit of fear in the background because I'm still human, or at least having a human experience. So I still crave, I think, exception and X, Y, and Z like other people do. I just don't allow that to hinder me from giving people the message that I feel spirit is giving me. I know there are people that could benefit, and I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, I was waiting for somebody to say it. I don't want them to always wait for somebody like me to say it. So my hope is that I inspire more people, even in their fear, even if your voice is shaking, even if you stutter over your words, to still say whatever it is that's on your mind when you feel led to speak on something. Sometimes we have that fear, I think, because we may not have all the words together, and we may not actually be within the right time or frame of time to say something yet. This is not the moment. But more often than not, I know when the moment has come, and I know if the moment is not executed through me as a vessel, it'll just skip over. It's like Michael Jackson saying, we got to get in the studio, because if not, Prince will have it in the morning. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, that's so true. And so you talk about everything. Like, you are not a one size fits all. You're not a meditation coach. You're not you're not just like a channel. You're not just one size fit, like you do all of it. You talk
Yeah.
about sexuality. You talk about, thought process. You talk about men versus women, like in that whole, not versus, but in conjunction with
Yeah.
women. And I think that when you can talk about so many things, and when you do, because like I started talking to you before we hit record,
Mhm.
you have this saying, and you're going to do it better than me, so I'm not even going to try, which is what?
I'm going to say something controversial, and your cognitive dissonance will deactivate your critical thinking the moment that you feel triggered. I'm not trying to offend you, but if you find yourself upset, self reflect.
I mean, it's so good. And for those of you who are like, okay, I have to listen to that back, please do. Because what you just said is, I'm about to trigger your ass. Know that I know this, but please stay with me anyways, because what I'm about to say, you might really benefit from. And everything in your body, when you hear what I'm about to say, is going to tell you that I'm wrong, that what you just heard is bullshit, or
Yep.
whatever. And I love the fact that you start those videos with that comment, with that um, sentiment,
Yeah.
because it allows people to kind of check in with their body, check in with themselves, and say, okay, I'm going to be open to this because I know that something big is coming, basically.
For sure. For sure. I think a lot of people immediately, when they hear me, because they think I just throw big words together and I talk fast, that I'm trying to sell them something or I'm trying to pull the wool over their eyes. But I have ADHD. So my mind is moving faster than my tongue, anyways. If I could speak as fast as my mind moves, you wouldn't be able to understand anything. And I think a lot of the big words people say I use are not actually big words. It is a reflection, maybe, of their own comprehension level. So they're already triggered when they hear me. Because if I say your cognitive dissonance, they're immediately like, there she goes. No, it just means your fear, but you don't know that word. And a lot of people want to call cap because, especially on TikTok, social media in general, you are not supposed to take, even with me, everything we say is something written in stone. But a lot of people take the things that they hear almost like somebody is preaching it as if it's written in stone. And anytime I present a controversial take, it's a controversial take. This is my hypothesis. This is my theory. This is what I believe is happening. And I'm presenting it to you to see if y'all think there might be anything relative that you want to add to the conversation. So, yeah, people, they struggle with that one.
Well, one thing I will say about your videos too is they seem to be in one take quite often, which I am ridiculously impressed with, because I will literally say a sentence, stop, sentence, word, stop, and you just go. Do you spend a lot of time in creation, or are you like, thought, I'm going to put this out there? Like, is it just very fluid to you?
It depends on the thought. So sometimes I might earlier in the week have one of the phrases that comes through, but I have no other context surrounding it. It's just this one bar, if you will. And it's like, oh, I like that. That's saucy. I should tweet it. But sometimes I hold it and I wait because there's something else to come with it. And then I start adding to. But that's more of a rare occasion. More often than not, something will happen. I'll watch somebody's video and I immediately start formulating a response. Like, how would I respond to this? Or how would I have said this? Or what would I add to this conversation? And then I go from there and I kind of think about how I'd want to say things and I write them in my note section because
Mm.
they come through in different orders. So whatever is said at the end of the video is probably what I got at the beginning of the video, or the beginning of my thought processing. And it does not come in one take. A lot of people say that, which is why I've actually stopped super editing. Like my last two videos, I have these moments where I fumble over my words and I just correct myself and keep pushing. Because
Mm.
a lot of people were in my comment section and they're like, she doesn't even stutter. And they don't realize that's an ableist statement because I actually do stutter. People that are brilliant tend to stutter. So, and then I don't want people feeling like they can't express themselves because they can't get it in one clean shot. That's just not truth. So instead, I also have spent a lot of time in theater. So with that, I know how to turn things almost into a script. Like if you were to memorize a song, after you get it in your head to like a certain rhythm or to a certain beat, the words are just there. That's what I tend to do with the things that I'm saying. I try and order them so they flow better like a song would. And then I can remember them easier. So then I'm able to get more in one take.
Yeah, I mean, you really crush it. You really definitely crush it.
Thank you.
So, and one thing that I'm amazed, and I shouldn't be, because to me, you're, you're kind of like a guru to me in just all the things that you talk about. Is you're so young. You're
Yeah.
so young to have all of this knowledge. And I need you guys to know that, like, fangirl, yes, but this, I mean, it's you've been through a lot, you've retained a lot, you're a thinker, you are a thinker 24/7. I can tell that about you just with what you bring to the table, and you are within the framework of religious deconstruction. You grew up in the religious community and have since, like, figured it out. So can you talk about that? Because I think religious deconstruction is a huge topic right now for a lot of people.
It is. So my father is a pastor. I grew up missionary Baptist in the South, and I
Wow.
spent 21 years in the church, really. Um, I have had questions since I was old enough to question, and something about the way the questions, because it wasn't just me, a lot of us in my Sunday school class, we had similar questions like, how do we know we have the right book though? Because our friends are, Muslim, our friends are Jewish. We want to make sure, like, how do we know? Because now we're worried our friends are going to hell. Being 11 years old, worried that your classmates are going to burn in hell for all eternity because they don't believe the way that you believe, wasn't registering right. I was like, why would God do that? Because what if one of my friends dies tomorrow? They have to go to hell. They didn't even have enough life to maybe change their mind or whatever. And we're so young, like, I changed my mind. So it was very scary. I was constantly worried about dying and being sent to hell for making the wrong choices. And then when I was 16, I had like this mental break. I was home for the summer by myself, and um, I don't know. I was just like depressed and anxious, I think. And I remember being in the middle of like the living room floor, or technically the family room, whatever. And I was like crying and I was screaming. And then I blacked out and I woke up and I was on the ground. So I believe I passed out because I wasn't initially on the floor. I was standing and pacing because I'm a pacer. And I like opened my eyes and I was like, what the fuck? And it was like one of those moments where you catch yourself crying and you're like, oh no, bitch. And then you like turn out of the mirror. And I wasn't in a mirror. It was just like a really weird moment for me. And I was like, I don't know what this was about. But before I like passed out, I was crying and pleading with God. And I was like, make me the most profound bitch in the room. I want to be like King Solomon, but maybe not with all the wives. Just give me the wisdom. I want to be wise. And so then I turned 18 and I went away to Bethune-Cookman and we had mandatory chapel. But because I was even skipping classes, I was like, I'm gonna fucking skip chapel. Screw this. I don't have to go to church. And the freedom, there was something so fun about the freedom. Fast forward a little bit, I run away for a summer to avoid my parents because I flunked out of college. And then when I came back, I had to deal with all the adult things. I had to go and get a job and work and da da da. And I met this guy. Actually, after I met Tuesday's father, him and I had met in like January, and I was 22. I just turned 22. Him and I met in January. Over the summer, he went to Massachusetts, so I didn't hear from him for like 3 months. And I met this guy, Teddy, during that period. And I started going to an adult sex resort with Teddy. And I was like, this is so crazy. I'm living this double life. I'm in church on Sunday after being in a sex club till 3 a.m. on technically Sunday morning, because Saturday going into Sunday. And there was something like really, I want to say riveting about that. Like I was excited, like, oh my gosh, I have this secret and I don't want it to be like this bad thing that God is angry with me with. But I'm finding so much fun in the way that I receive this attention and, I get to live this life and I feel open and there's a lot of pleasure in this. There's a lot of uh, shit that I haven't experienced before. So once Tuesday's dad came back into town and him and I started dating again, then I started skipping church on Sundays to be with him. So I would still go with Teddy Friday and Saturday night to the sex resort and then be with Tuesday's dad on Sunday and tell my parents I was babysitting. And I would sometimes if her dad went to hit golf balls or some shit like that. But really, we were just fucking all day. And I was like, I don't know about this. Like, I'm warring with myself. I know God is probably angry. So then there was the assassination of the rapper Nipsey Hussle. And I knew Lauren London, his wife, but I was not familiar with Nipsey in a way where I could say I was a fan. Like I heard some of his songs and they were cool. I just wasn't like a Nipsey person. But something about him dying or being killed, I was like, this is weighing really heavy on me. Like the energy was just really heavy. So I was like, I'm just gonna look him up because I'm so intrigued by this and I don't know why. And it was really two tattoos that he has. One said prolific, one said God will rise. And as a Christian, God will rise shouldn't have struck me weird, but it did. It didn't feel like Christianity. So I was like, let me see what he believes in. And that's when I found this video about his mom and him being spiritual and da 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 da. So I was like, spiritual. And there was a YouTube suggestion, because YouTube will give you a whole bunch of other videos to look through. And one of the videos was how Christianity strips you of your spirituality by a man named Brother Keston. So I clicked that video. It was like 45 minutes or some shit. I was undone. I was sitting on the couch at Tuesday's father's house crying, trying to figure out if my entire religious experience had been essentially a fluke, because he was going over how Christianity came into history and the fact that it is not the first religion. It is a derivative of other religions and other sacred workings and yada, yada, yada. So I started doing research because in the church, we always heard study to show thyself approved. So I was like, I have to study, because even when my atheist friends would be like, oh, well, God did this and God is that, I always had a way to argue. But after the things that Brother Keston said, I felt like I had no argument. I didn't know how to frame one. So I started doing all this research, and that was really it that Friday, because that was on a Tuesday. I did the research because Nipsey was killed on a Sunday. So that Tuesday I did my research, um, Tuesday and Wednesday. Friday, my father was like, either you're in my house, you're going to church, or you have to go live somewhere else. So I moved out that same weekend, and I haven't been back to church since. I haven't been back to religion. It just kept going from there. Me pulling information, cross referencing, doing comparisons via timeline and X, Y, and Z. So yeah.
That's amazing. And I love the way that you're able to literally go back to the day and how profound that was. I can actually go back to the day that I remember looking up at my kitchen ceiling and going like, God, there has to be more than this. Like there has to be more than stand up, sit down, pray. Like there has to be more as you're talking about. And I do talk about as well that when you start the spiritual journey, it's so different. It's so personal than a religious journey. It's you're home all the time. You're home inside of self all the time with, and the answers come and it makes sense. And there's no separation between you and this thing, God or whatever you want to call it. And it is very personal and it is very, very powerful. And it's like once you see it, you can't put the tube back, the toothpaste back in the tube because you know too much. You're too aware. You have the answers, just as God has talked about, and that's really powerful. And I think that, people hear in you talking about sex and talking about sexuality, and it is the cognitive dissonance from our childhood of, you're bad and, the spirit, God can see you and you're doing the wrong thing and you're going to go to hell or you have to repent. And one thing that I love that you have taught me so much is that like sex is also a part of the spiritual experience. You are a physical body. You were given physical pleasure for a reason. This is not separate and away from. And I think, especially being a 51-year-old woman, married or not, sex still can be super difficult.
For sure. Yeah.
Super difficult. And that's something that you have really helped me with, even in 1-minute video, is accepting myself and my pleasure and my female body as being acceptable, right? Like even acceptable, that it's okay to feel what you feel. And I think parents are so afraid of their kids finding out that sex is pleasurable, that they try to be like, oh, it's with someone you love, and oh, it's this and it's that. You know what I mean? Like it's such this dirty thing. And it's us as parents that put this programming in our children and have been done to us. And then we have to spend decades possibly climbing out of that and women are looked at as frigid, right? And it's all programming.
I don't even think it's just limited to the parents. I think it's more so how we treat each other within society. We know men get pats on the back for taking down as many women as possible, but those women are always slut shamed, and more often than not by other women who have been taught, maybe in their childhood or in their teen years, that if you want to be a good woman, you have to be a pure woman. Men want pure women. But in that, if you're a pure woman, that really just means you're inexperienced. You don't know what your pleasure is supposed to feel like. That way, you can be gaslit into believing that if you don't like what he's done to you, that it's not him, it's a you problem. Something is wrong with you. But because you've been trained to believe you have to be pure, you're not going to go and try and cross reference and test this theory with other men to see, is it me or is it him? So instead, you stay in this marriage or you stay in this relationship with a man who is terrible in bed, and then you think sex is just a stupid thing. So when you hear women like me talking about, I fucking love sex, you're like, she's obviously a whore. Well, I had to have a couple of bodies to figure out which body was the best because I lost my virginity when I turned 18 and I got to Cookman, Bethune-Cookman University. And then the guy I slept with after I lost my virginity was terrible. Actually, it's on my Patreon because I do sex coaching on my Patreon now. And I have a book called The Cosmic Coochie Chronicles. Everybody is a chapter. So I go through all the bodies that I've taken and how it's a chapter in my life. Each body has taught me something, whether 3 minutes or 3 hours, it's taught me something. And so in that, I recount like all like the first bodies that I had and how each one was so different and how I still um am so grateful for the way I lost my virginity because the guy that I lost it to, he was like, I'm going to warn you now. He gave me a controversial warning. He was like, you're going to be fucked up in the brain. He was like, you're going to want me more than you're supposed to. And I'm thinking he's just a guy gassing himself up. But he was trying to explain to me how sex creates a connection that we may not be expecting. And so in that, I was like, no, I'm good. Oh my God, he had me fighting women on campus. It was so fucking crazy. I was crazy. And so after that, and experiencing more men and different sex, I learned the ones that I enjoy good sex with, I do become crazy over. It becomes a territorial thing because I'm realizing because all men have dicks doesn't mean that they're all good in bed. So
Right.
now it's like, oh, I want to hold on to this one that I feel the pleasure with, but he may not actually be a good guy for me. He's just good in bed. So there's a lot of education that comes with sex because once you are in a state as intimate as sex is with somebody, somebody that was just yelling at you previously, but now
Mm.
he's holding you and caressing you, that easily will lead you into a place of believing, no, he does care about me. Look how intimate we're being. This is not the same intimate act for him that it is for you. So, yeah, I feel like no matter what, I think women need to teach their daughters or their sons or their children in general about sex so they know. Because my stepmom didn't really give me any tea until I was 18. And she was like, these are birth control pills, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, well, wait, because now I don't know anything. And so I had to get all my training from my friends. And they didn't know shit either because them were fucking men that weren't good in bed too. So it's yeah, definitely something that people should talk about more. It shouldn't be taboo because we're all doing it.
Yeah, and I think that what you brought up there with your first is
Hmm.
so powerful that he took the time to say that because as men or women, I don't know, I can only speak for myself. You have no idea that you're about to embark on a psychosis of connection, be it real or not real. And I do watch these young girls with the Tinder and the swiping and the, all this stuff. And I do wonder if they are haphazardly sleeping with people, if they're taking the time, like what you're talking about right here, I think is really powerful for young women to understand. You might think you're not connected, or you might think you are connected to this person, but you really need to check in with yourself and say, like, what am I doing here? Like, am I learning? Am I growing? Am I connecting? Am I disassociating? Because those things all do happen in these one off relationships or one
Hmm.
off evenings. And I think it's important to even acknowledge that that spiritual, that cord, whatever you want to call it, it does happen.
For sure. I think a lot of people, like I know for me, when I first heard about soul ties through sex, I
Mhm.
dismissive because I didn't, that cognitive dissonance got shut off and I didn't want to think about the fact that I might have been a crazy bitch over some dick because I saw myself as being above that. But then when I realized how crazy I have been, I was like, oh no, Other people need to know we're in danger out here because a lot of us, especially once COVID hit, COVID changed sex so much, and people do not talk about this. We spent a year in the house. Or we were supposed to be spending a year in the house,
Right.
and people lost a lot of the connection skills that they had before that. And some people didn't even really have them before that. So all the going out that we used to do, I used to make out with random men and random women in the bar. Now we don't do shit like that because, oh, germs. But before, I was wilding out here. So in that, once COVID hit, it put a lot of us in an attention deficit, an affection deficit. The way the Tinder apps, Bumble, I would fight that woman if I could, mainly because it gives men the illusion that they have more options than they do. And it also gives us the illusion that we have more options than we actually do because, oh, all these people like me. All these people, I have like 6,000 men in my Bumble. And when I go through it, it's like, God, there's so many options here. But to find one, I haven't found one. So it's like there
Mhm.
aren't all these options. So because I'm in an affection deficit and he's in an attention deficit, we come together, we're fucking around, and now here goes this soul tie forming because we're feeding something that neither one of us has addressed, and we don't know what each other is feeding. So we don't even know why we keep coming back to each other. And that's people as a whole. Something about you needs something, something about him needs something, and y'all won't be honest about it because you don't want to do that introspective work because it's uncomfortable. It makes you vulnerable, and you can't do it with each other because you're both dishonest as to why y'all are here. You think you're
Mm.
okay with just fucking him and moving on, but then you think about him. You get angry when he doesn't text you back fast enough, or when he doesn't text you back at all. The whole time you said this was just sex. We're not honest people. So that's
Yeah,
one.
I can't even tell you how many clients I get that come and say, I broke up with this guy a year ago and I can't let it go. I can't
Yup.
drop him. I can't stop thinking about him. And then they think it's some sort of crazy, you know,
Soul
soul
tie,
tie and they're supposed to be with him.
contract.
Yep.
Oh Lord.
Lord have mercy. The contract. I can't. And it's mind blowing because you're like, these people are suffering. They
Yeah.
wake up thinking about this partner. They go to sleep. They're obsessing. They're not moving on. And they think it's this some soul tie connection shit that they're supposed to find their way back to this person. And it is so destructive. And if, like you're saying, if we would just be honest in the moment of, this codependent sexuality, this codependent relationship, need, whatever, post COVID, pre COVID, wherever you're at in your life, if we would start talking about, like, this is where I'm at, this is what I need, this is what I'm missing, we
Yeah,
would have a whole different conversation.
for sure. I think a lot of those people experience, I feel like sex is very obviously a drug based off the amount of chemical releases that happen when we have sex. So depending on how good that shit is, it becomes like when I've heard people talk about heroin and other drugs where they're essentially chasing the high. You never get
Mhm.
the same high back. You're always trying to get the initial one. And I think for sex, that's it. You
That's,
may
yeah.
try to move on with other people, but you can't get that back. There was a guy I slept with last year, and I was actually celibate 2 years before I slept with him. I was like off the sex, not intentionally, unintentionally. But, anyways, so I fucked him. I thought, no, he fucked me. And before it happened, because our intuition is crazy. Just because you want something doesn't mean spirit won't warn you before you have it. So
Mm.
I had this vision, and I'm a channeler, meaning, I tend to get the messages either claircognizant drop ins, or it could be one of these two. Either I hear it like a whisper in my ear, or somebody tries to take over the vessel to be the one communicating because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to, or because they need more ownership to be able to get their message across. But I had this vision of he was at the Airbnb I rented because I was in Miami, or near Miami in Hollywood, and I was on the couch. We were drinking, and I had this vision of him dropping his glass and it shattering. But he got up and went to the other side of the couch to pour himself another drink. And instead of walking back the way that he came, he walked around and crossed in front of me and kicked my wine glass over, and it shattered everywhere. And he was like, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed. He just kept mentioning how embarrassed he was. And I was like, it's cool. We clean up the glass, we go back to drinking and talking. And then he touches my knee, and he had kept scooching closer to me. And for whatever reason, I kept scooching away because me knowing me, I thought I was going to be all over it, like leaning in and whatever. But he touched my knee, and I had like this surge of voices, and it was real loud. And they were like, he hit her, he did this, he did that. And it was like,
Oh my God.
on him. But I was like, I'm drinking hooch, I'm drinking tequila, I'm smoking weed. This could very easily be the fact that I'm just under the influence and I'm tripping. So I was like, no. And the sex was phenomenal. He is a true lover boy. But when you have men that don't just fuck, they make love to whomever, because he had
Mm.
separated from his fiance. So he was trying to feel something again. And so he was looking for women, I think, that are kind of like me, as far as I'm open to love with however it comes and whatever form it comes in. And all love does not last. Sometimes you need somebody to give you an I love you and keep it pushing. I've had strangers just be like, hey, I love you at random places. And it's like, what? I love you, like random people. And it's so weird, but it's such a cute thing at the same time, but not when it's sex, because that's the worst time you want somebody to drop an I love you. And I have an I love you kink, which means if I'm in a relationship with you and we're not there yet, you say I love you, I'm gonna say it back because we're fucking, but we may not discuss it outside of the bedroom, because I like to hear that shit in the bedroom. It makes shit feel better. But for him, I was actually into him. So him saying it put me in a really weird place. And then there were all these games that he played afterwards. And it was the fact that he was trying to conquest my mind, because a lot of
Mm.
men have a mission. They are conquestors by nature. They are looking for something to conquer. And when you are not a woman that, even if you are a woman that easily gives away the cat, some of them don't just want the cat, they want headquarters. And that's your brain. They have to be able to disrupt you. And knowing that I'm a celebrity spiritual consultant and I spend a lot of time reading people, for him, it was like, I want to see if you could read me. I want to see
Mm.
how much you're going to know about anything. And there was all these different signs. And then I'm leaving the Airbnb. I'm on my way back home. And I was like, universe, I need a sign, because I feel like this fool is playing with me. So he texts me. And there was like this really well thought out apology. And I was like, oh, universe, okay, I'll take this as a sign. I kid you not, I turned the fucking music up. Maybe 5 seconds passed before ding, 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 alarm goes off on my car. I ran over a nail, and my air wouldn't keep, or my tire wouldn't keep air for longer than 15 minutes. So I had to trek home for 3 hours still with this fucked up tire because I didn't have a spare in my trunk like I was supposed to. It was all this shit. And I
Mm.
was fucked up for like a month over him. And every now and then he'll creep into my mind and I get pissed off again, because I'm like, how did you get past my security system? How did this work? And so when we have those clients that come to us and they're like, I can't get him out of my mind, it's probably because some of them are not admitting that they got played worse than they think. But the other ones, they don't realize how open they left themselves. They know they got played, but they don't know where. They can't see which field they were on when they got played. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's trying to dissect, why does this affect me so much? Because he felt something that was missing, and now you don't know how to replace that with somebody else. Because I've come to the realization through time, though, that it wasn't him. It could have been anybody. As long as they could do what he did, it
Right.
could be any of them. And that for me was how I started to deconstruct what I thought were soul ties with somebody or a contract or something karmic, because I don't subscribe to any of that. So I was like, what is this, universe? Why do I feel this way? Nothing. You're in a deficit and you have to address the deficits.
Oh my God, you're in a deficit.
Mm,
That is the sentence of this podcast,
yep.
is recognizing your deficit that you're filling with someone else's whatever at the time, and deconstructing that inside of you so that you can stop looking for. I always tell people the worst lie we were ever told was by Jerry Maguire, which is you complete me.
Ah. No one. No one.
All of us women out here just like looking for someone to complete them.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what you're talking about, is that thing that you think is love, but it's actually this thing that you're missing in self that you're finding out there. Be it you're finding your dad, you're finding your mom, you're finding someone to pay attention to, you're finding someone to buy you flowers, Miley Cyrus.
Yeah.
And I think that that is the nail on the head right there, is that you're trying to get back there. And
Yeah.
that's so huge. And I think if more people would understand, they wouldn't be in this crazy cycle of looking for something to complete them. They would know that they were just looking for a partner, either for right now or forever, whatever, but it
Right.
wouldn't be the psychosis that they get themselves into, because
For
it's
sure.
deep.
And I think that's another thing, us believing that the person that we end up with has to always be your person. We, as people, struggle with ownership. We always want to own things that we cannot own. These people are not yours to keep and to hold. And that's why, like, even when it comes to marriage, I've thought about how I would like my marriage vows to go when it happens. I don't want this to be a forever and everything if it don't make sense to us anymore.
Yeah.
I want to be safe for the time that we consider to be forever, because time, and not to get too like deep into it, but time just keeps going. All the timelines are still active. So in that, this moment will always be solidified. It will always exist. But we don't have to keep existing in this one moment, because we have to keep going too. And a lot of us get in these relationships and we stay longer than we're supposed to, because it's like, no, I'm not going to find this again. That's probably a good thing, baby doll. Maybe you don't need to find this again. You probably never needed this as long as you had it in the first place. So people have to learn how to let go and address their deficits, for sure.
Well, I know you're definitely, like you say, everyone's favorite, like, spiritual cousin. Like, you just bring it.
Yeah.
You bring what some of us don't want to hear, what might be painful to hear, but I will say everything that you bring, at least for me, is something that benefits my life and my growth and my journey. And sometimes it does challenge and put me into cognitive dissonance. Um, but I think it's so valuable. And I love the fact that you do have that religious background, because I will tell you, if you watch her videos, if you work with her as a client, and she does everything, Jasmine does everything from 5-minute appointments to 60 minutes appointments. Like, if she will find in every budget, she has a Patreon, like she said, she has a book. So and she does thousands and thousands of free content online, be it Instagram. She has 300 plus followers, 300,000 plus followers over on Instagram. And like I said, 3.6 million people listening to her on TikTok, tons of free content. But when you work with her, she has a way, because she is a channel and she does have that religious background. She can talk about everything. Like, that's one thing I love about you, is people will bring you religious shit and you know it forwards, backwards, sideways. You know the verse, the whatever. You know exactly what you're talking about, and at such a young age, and it's brilliant to me. It screams, I don't even know. It screams. I hate words, but like guru,
And
like it's just so helpful. Like, because you have all of the parts, you
yeah,
have all of the pillars of information. I can't imagine someone working with you who is going to bring anything to you that you're not going to be able to help them with, which is what I love so much. Again, you're not a manifestation coach. You're not a meditation coach. You're not just a medium who's going to talk to dead people. You have the ability, because of your breadth of knowledge, to really help people deconstruct, find their power, be comfortable in their sexuality, be comfortable in their spirituality. You're actually going to be in Nashville on May 22nd, which
26th.
is the Hoodoo Heritage Festival.
Yeah, the 26th.
Or 26, sorry.
No worries. I'll be in Nashville for the Hoodoo Heritage Festival. There are a few things I'm not qualified for. I can't teach you astrology, and I don't teach people closed practices that I'm not initiated into. So, like for the Hoodoo Heritage Festival, as their speaker, I'm more so doing a poem and then talking about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is a
Mhm.
message open for everybody. Because if they wanted a message specifically tied for hoodoo, they'd have to pick somebody who's initiated. I would have submitted my mentor, the magical lady Duchess, for example. So if I am not qualified, I will point you in the direction of somebody that I think you need to go to, because I don't do everything, but I do almost everything for sure.
Yeah. And so you have a book which is available where?
On the Patreon. It's chapter by chapter release. We actually have the second book getting ready to come out, which is my Sip and Fuck It spiritual beginner's guide. And it's really just a accumulation of all the questions people ask and the things that I believe are pillar to a spiritual journey. So not written in stone, but probably a good support for the foundation that you're laying. But yeah, they're all available through Patreon. We have a group chat, 5 different group chats in the Patreon for the different levels. We have one for the beginners, the intermediate, and the advanced occultist. Then we also have something called the land of the rebuffed. So if you got an ex that you keep swinging the block on and you are scared to drop him off, or you don't know how to drop him off, you submit him to the land of the rebuff, and we drag him. And we drag him so good, you'll be embarrassed to go back to him. So we have that. And then we also have the group chat that's for everybody, which is like being in a group chat with your friends. But on Wednesdays and Fridays, I'm in there for 2 hours answering as many questions. So it starts at $3 as a tier up to $20 as a tier. So you just pick. And we recently started a book club, the Librarians of Alexandria. So yeah, we also have the book club where we're reading Sorting with the Spirits by Jason Miller, because everybody want to work with spirits, but nobody wants to read the literature on how. So
yeah, so many great ways to work with you.
yeah.
And, you know, the majority of my listeners and viewers are women, probably middle age.
Yeah.
And I know that you all are out there listening and going, I want to work with her. She sounds intriguing. I like the way she talks about sex. I like her take. It's a little intimidating. Do it. Do the thing. Do the damn thing. Get in there. The one thing is you're not judgmental. You're going to talk about it very plainly. You're going to get to the nitty gritty as to what this, your hang up is, be it you a man, a woman, whatever. You're going to find it and you're going to help. I mean, even when you and I were working together, small things like, hey, go watch this movie. Yes. Hey, go check this out. Go read this. Go find out about this scent. Whatever it is that is going to help bring what a person needs, maybe doesn't know that they even want. I found for myself anyways that you were able to find that. And even just watching your videos, even if it's one sentence, the challenge to self, the challenge to the way we think about ourselves and the world and religion and God. And, it doesn't matter if it's raising our children, relationships. I love the way that you challenge people to think for themselves. And you bring the topic and just say, hey, here, look at this. Look at this. Do you see yourself in this? Can I challenge you in this? And I think so many of us need that today, because we do tend to, especially if you haven't deconstructed your religion, it might be an itch that you need to scratch, and Jasmine's your person to do that with, because she's going to bring the heat. So I so appreciate you spending time with us and just sharing all the time. Like, all your videos, I appreciate what you bring to the world, because you're just such a breath of beautiful and kind and genuine and vulnerable fresh air. And the world needs all of your content.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I do. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here. Thank you to everybody that's listening, for sure.
Well, you have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for listening, Jasmine. Don't let go, please, until I say goodbye to everybody. But I'll see you guys all here next week. Check out Jasmine's Garden. I will have all of her contacts in the show notes, and I'll see you guys here next week. Thanks for listening. If you would like to connect on a more personal level, head over to meredithwillits.com or on Instagram at Meredith with a Y for behind-the-scene footage and outtakes. Please subscribe and come back each week for more Meredith with a Y. Thanks again for listening.